It was a great panel. And what I wanted to do is, I'm sure that a lot of you guys had a lot of questions, things you didn't understand from the panel, because the number of hands that went up when we talked about WebSockets and Comet was not so great, right? So what this is all about is evangelizing Comet, how you can get started with it, showing the code, kind of walking through what it is, and hopefully we can get the word out there, because I'm a little bit different than a lot of the panelists, I guess. I'm really not representing anyone or any product other than, I guess, myself. So, I've got experience with Comet, working with Cometd, and Bayeu, so I'm very happy to share that information with you. So a little bit about me. I run the Silicon Valley Web Developer Java User Group and the Silicon Valley Google Technology User Group, and both those meet here. So you can find out information about me there. So start just briefly, what's Ajax, right? Like I talked about before, with Ajax, basically a browser, a client, is requesting that information from a server. So everything is initiated at the browser, right? So this is a lot of great frameworks. Alex has got Dojo, and one of the other things that's really cool out there is the JSON stuff that Crockford's done. Really amazing in bundling packages. Yeah. So it's a JavaScript object notation. So are you a Java developer? A little bit? Java developer? So in Java, if you take a list, or better yet, like a hash map, and you do a toString on it, you get value colon, or key colon value. That's what JSON is. So historically, with Ajax, you're dealing with XML, which is this huge overhead, lots of crazy bracket. It's a crazy game, right? Of opening and closing tags. JSON is a very optimized thing that basically is used across the board. So I just wanted to point it out in this slide. Uses of Ajax, it's great for doing multiple requests, right? To fill out city, state, these kind of things. You start out with the zip code, things like that, where you're basically, as somebody does something on the web, you make a server-side call. So drilling down in reports, verifying form data. Maybe you want to make sure that the customer ID they enter is, they are a valid customer. And then things like Google Map, adding routes to a map, right? So what are limitations, right? Chat application, right? You never know when someone's going to chat, and that's kind of a server-side event. You never know when that's going to happen. If you're doing some kind of a portfolio, something like the stock updates, any kind of sensor data, temperature, things like that. And, say you want to do something that tailing a log file or something like that, or looking at CPU and things like that. Any of these kind of monitoring things, it's really not possible. And then anywhere where you would use JMS, right? A message system, that's a really good place that Ajax just can't really deal with well. But the best thing that we have is Ajax polling, right? How many of you have written Ajax polling applications? Yeah, quite a few. I'm surprised it's not more, but I've written basically, gosh, I don't know, maybe 20 different Ajax polling things, and I've done it in Swing, and I've done it in several languages, right? The same kind of idea. So now let's shift gears to what is Comet, right? So Comet is, like I said, the idea of pushing data from the server to the browser. And one of the things, it is kind of the reverse of Ajax, right? So sometimes it's called reverse Ajax. You'll hear this term. Pushlets is another term that you hear a lot of times. But it's really kind of challenging to do because HTTP itself is a connectionless protocol, right? So when you look at the difference between something like FTP, where you maintain a socket the entire time, HTTP itself, when you send a request, it closes, and you're not connected to the server in any way. So that's a huge, huge challenge. And another thing that about Comet, you've seen a lot of streaming stuff on the internet, but almost all of that is done with some kind of an applet or a Flash plugin, whatever it is, a Flex thing. So what's unique about Comet is that there is no client installation. There's no scary, hey, this thing might blow up your computer. Hey, this could be a virus. Hey, this could cause, other, concerns. It's strictly HTTP, HTML, JavaScript. It's right there in the browser. So there is no, that can really get you out to a huge customer base that you could never, very good, that you could never reach. So now what are the uses of Comet, right? This is just copy and paste from the other slide. Those limitations of Ajax are the real strengths of Comet. So be it a chat application, right? You never know when someone's going to chat, but you're going to want to broadcast that out from the server to the clients. Stock updates, any kind of sensor data, doing server load, things like that. That's all, really where Comet is strong. So let's look at kind of the first option that of doing it. This is not really considered Comet. This is traditional Ajax polling. So basically what you do is from your browser here, you'll make a request to a web server, maybe just start a long-running query, right? And then what happens is it immediately comes back and just says basically query's not completed. So they're going to wait for a certain poll interval, and then make another request and say, hey, is the query completed? And then it comes back to the server. And while you're waiting on the client, basically that query has completed. But you're still waiting and waiting and waiting. And then finally the poll interval's up. I make another request and say, hey, is the query completed? Yes, here's the data. So what's really unique, what you notice is that when the query completed, we're having to wait, right, a certain interval. You also notice that we've made several Ajax network requests that serve absolutely no purpose. So you got a lot of overhead, especially if you have a lot of customers. So now I got kind of a cartoony type of a picture here of two of my favorite little wiener dogs, right? So it says, can you push this so I can see? That's okay. It says, what's your favorite treats? So the dog kind of thinks about it. He says, oh, is it peanuts? Is it rice cakes? Is it bones, right? I can't. So he replies. He says, I can't decide. He says, again, what's your favorite treat? And then he narrows it down a little bit more. But he still says, I can't decide. What's your favorite treat? Still can't decide. And then he realizes, oh, I know what it is, right? It's bones. It's bones. So then he has to wait. And when he asks a question, he says, what's your favorite treat? And he tells him bones. So you see this interaction going back and forth between the dogs several times. You see here that, he's come up with his decision, but he's like, hey, I want to tell you, but you're not asking me, right? So that's kind of what polling's about, right? So, yeah, it's got a lot of issues. It's got a lot of limitations. But as an architect, just because of that, there are still a ton of applications where I'm going to recommend to you polling is a great option, right? It's been used, it's tried and true. If you're not sending a lot of data, if you don't have a lot of customers, this is a really nice way to do it. So I'll jump into a kind of a simple polling example here. And what I have is basically just a simulated long-running query, just like we had in the UML. And you can see kind of the request here. So basically when I kick it off, it says, loading, another dot, another request, another dot, another request, and then eventually it'll say query complete, right? So here it is, query data, right? So what you notice, like I said, every single request is only 7 milliseconds, right? So it's very, very quick, back and forth. It's just asking, is it done? And then finally when it is done, it returns the data, right? So that's kind of an example. And kind of the implementations of this were all very, if you're Ajax developers, is done kind of with a set timeout, right? So basically here you can see where I'm asking it. Basically I have something called run query, and it runs, it basically, what it does is if it's still running, then it times out, and in 2 seconds it asks it to basically poll again. Otherwise, it go ahead and updates the inner HTML of a node and disables, as it's finished. So let's jump back over to the slides, and let's talk about the next option that you have. And this is considered Comet. This is something called long polling. And what long polling is basically when you make a request to the server, then you just sleep on the server, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And then when the data is finally available, you're going to notify and have that thread wake up, and then basically provide that, finish that request. So here we go through a simple example. I kick off a long-running query, and then basically it says, hey, are you finished? And then it sleeps. It waits, it waits, it waits. And then finally what it does is it doesn't want the connection to time out, so the server what's wise to do is basically to go ahead and return that you don't have data, and then make another request immediately. Say, okay, is this query finished? And you wait and wait. Then the second that that query finishes, you immediately push the data back to the browser. So kind of when we look at the differences, a lot of time, depending on your application, it's only a single request, right? So that's a big advantage over Ajax. When you have varying times of how long these, when your data is going to become available, this is a great advantage. It also has the advantage, basically the second that data is available, you're able to push it back to your customer. So back to the dogs, right? So what's your favorite treat? And he thinks about it, and he kind of narrows it down. He thinks some more, and then finally he replies, bones are my favorite treat. So what you see here is you're not seeing that interaction going back and forth between the dogs, and the second he's made up his mind, he immediately is able to give him that data, right? So here's a simple like a chat application that I wrote, right, that does kind of a long polling. So I say, hello, how are you, right? Boom. And basically, if you look here in Firebug, I did this with a Google GWT. What you'll see is that you don't see like request polling and stuff like that, right? And then when I send it, bam, there's a request. Now we're waiting and waiting and waiting, right? So next piece of data, boom, there's another request, right? So that is another one of the limitations is with each time that you send data, it's different than streaming, you do have an additional request. Okay? So let's close that up. Oops, there we are. So now I'll go over to this little demo I have on, go over to the long polling. So this is the same kind of thing, right? We're going to run a long-running query on a server and see how the request worked below. So before, remember, each request was 7 milliseconds, right? So this time, you see how it's still making the request. Still running, still running. It timed out. Now it kicks off another one, but it's waiting, it's waiting, it's waiting. It's waiting, it's waiting. And then the second the data is available, right? You can see how I have a 4-second timeout, if you can see that. And then basically 2 seconds in, it returned the information. So the second the query was complete, we're able to return that data, and then also we have less network requests and a higher, basically, higher throughput in that regards. So now let's look at what is the grand thing that we really want, and that's something called streaming, right? So we'd like to be able to open a connection and just kind of be able to push data all over the place, right? That would be wonderful, right? Especially from the server to the client, and then we can use Ajax to come kind of the other direction. So here, let's look at back to our dogs. Rather than what is your favorite treat, now we make it plural. What are your favorite treats, right? So he says, hey, peanuts are my favorite treat, rice treats are another one of my favorite treats, and bones are my final favorite treat. So basically, with a single request from Patrice, Bo is able to send his 3 favorite treats. Okay? And there's something you look at. So let's talk about challenges, right? What makes Comet so hard? It's kind of you have the 2 request limit per domain. So when you think about a streaming connection, if that connection's open the whole time, and then you open another streaming connection, now you can no longer download any images, any CSS, and you can't make any Ajax calls, right? So you're really limited in that regards. So you kind of need to make a single channel upon which all messages can go, kind of like a messaging bus is a nice way to get around that. But this 2 request limit is going to be around for a long time. Even though it has gone away, you're still going to have to support customers that are using that. And then when we look at server side, there's a whole lot of failed implementations because of this. And most of these servers out there have a problem of being 1 thread per request. So basically when a request comes in, a thread is tied to it. When you sleep, you're still using that thread. And this is a huge memory consumption. So if you're going to have 10,000 customers, you're going to need like 10 gig of memory. So it's kind of the numbers that Sun talks a lot about. And one of the things mention under this is in Servlet 3, they're going to add support for continuation, and this is really going to standardize and really bring Comet into the broad masses, I think, because it basically standardizes that every Java server is going to have support for this, for basically doing kind of a pooling type of idea with the request. So when you do a continuation, kind of what happens is the request starts on one thread, but if there's no data that you need to push, you just put that thread to sleep, or put that request to sleep, right? You kind of stop processing it, and then basically the thread can be put back on a pool and used by any other request, and then when you're ready to continue, you get that request back. So the thread that started the request, in many cases, will not be the same thread that finishes the request. Yeah. There's a lot of different options, but the option that is chose by Java, right, to implement this, that's really going to standardize this in Servlet 3, is a continuation model. It's very similar to a database connection pool, right? Just like a database connection pool, which we've used, you kick 100 connections and you have 10,000 people running queries, right? It's obviously if that rate is too high, it's not going to, you have to scale accordingly. So let's talk about Bayou now. So what is it, right? It's an open standard, and it's really the only open standard, because Zing might kind of disagree, but it's really the only open standard for doing Comet, right? And it is open source. It's kind of a publish subscribe is really where its strengths are at. Currently in draft format, so it's not finalized, which I think is a good thing. And as far as client-side implementations, Dojo, jQuery, XTJS, Flex Comet, probably more. And then on the server side, Jetty, Comet, Webster, WebLogic. And then if you don't want to do Java, you have options there as well. You can do in Perl and Python with a Cometd Twisted and a Cometd Perl. So that really gives you, quite a few options. You can see the adoption is huge. When we asked the WebLogic guys to come out and talk, they just kind of said they wanted to talk about Comet, right? We asked Ted and Ice Faces to come out and talk, left it up to them. They wanted to come out and talk about Comet, talk about Bayou. So, that adoption's coming out there, and this is a really nice standard to get on board with. I'm a real lover of it. I've had nothing but, great success. It's held up to what I've expected. Yes. I'm more in the Java side of things, right? That's really where I can talk. Yeah. Yeah, Alex would love for you to implement that. It's basically to summarize what he's saying. And anyone else in the room who'd like to do that, just send Alex an email, and I'm sure we can get you guys some free pizza or something if you do that. So, and then you come give a talk and give more people free pizza, right? So I'm going to skip the sensor stuff that I had, and because we're limited on time, and go right into kind of what does it look like, right? So here's basically how you can basically publish data, right? So it is kind of channel based, right? So what a channel is very similar to like on your television, right? If you turn on channel 3 and everybody who turns on channel 3, when they broadcast on channel 3, everybody who's watching gets it, right? You turn on Discovery, they broadcast Discovery to everyone out there who gets it. So in this example, I'm just doing a simple chat. I pulled this right out of the Cometd examples. Basically here we're publishing to a chat channel, and then we have a JSON object, what I talked about earlier, which says the chat is whatever text I define up there, hello, right? So that's basically publishing data, right? So now let's look at subscribing, right? So now you want to listen to that chat, right? These are the people who are going to listen. So what they do, first thing they do there is they subscribe to the chat channel, and then basically they say, anytime a chat message is sent, I would like you to call the function, the callback function, chat message. So here below is the function chat message, and it takes a message, right? So this makes sense. When somebody chats and I get a message on the chat channel, this is what I'm going to do with it, right? First, I'm going to check if the message has data. If it doesn't, like something bogus has happened. So forget it, bail on that. Otherwise, I'm going to get the message's data, and then I'm going to look at its chat, right? That goes one-to-one with before when I published the chat, right? So that's the chat. It's probably bad. I should put like chat message or something there, but I guess I call the other chat message. Still confusing. So that's a publish and that's a subscribe. Now, one of the other really nice things is it uses these meta channels to give you information about connection, disconnection, reconnection, all this kind of information. So that's always nice stuff to know and kind of what you're going to do in different cases, right? So if you disconnect your internet connection and plug back in, what's going to happen. So here you can see basically, if you get a connection event and then here you were disconnected, that's what a reconnect looks like. This is what a disconnect looks like. So you can kind of use that meta channel information to determine what's happening. So now, I've talked about doing it from JavaScript. Now let's look at server side, right? From the server, you need to publish, you need to subscribe, all this information. So here's a simple publish, right? So you're going to publish to a particular channel, right? So before we were talking about like a chat channel. And then you're going to pass it, basically you can either pass it a JSON literal or a map, right, in Java, key value pair. And basically what Bayeu allows you to do is to check basically if a channel exists. Because if nobody out there is subscribed to that channel, you probably don't want to publish to it, right? So that's a nice, another nice feature. It's optional. You definitely don't have to do that. And then what you can do is get the channel, from Bayeu, you can get the channel, and this false means like create or not. And then what you can do is publish to the data, right? So this client is the server client, and the data is the map that was passed in, and this is basically the key of the message, or like an ID, a unique ID. So, any questions so far? It's pretty easy, right? To publish, I mean, it's basically a one-liner right here to publish data. Subscribe, also kind of a one-liner. Same idea. I call get a channel for a string, and if it doesn't exist, the true. Basically, that's basically it. And then what method do I want to be called, whenever I subscribe, when I get a call back. And what that signature looks like, it has the message first, and then there's a various number of overloadings where you can get the client or not get the client. You can get the message ID or not get the message ID. There's a lot of things, but, just depending on what data that you want there. And then basically, here's how you do an unsubscribe. You look up a particular channel, or if you already have access to that channel, then you just unsubscribe a client. So that client could be one of the clients on the web, or it could be your server, right? You have the ability to do both. So remove notification, right? You'd like to add a listener when a client basically times out or when they're disconnected, so you kind of know who's basically connected. And this is a listener that can be added to get that information. So it's a remove listener, and this all implements some kind of interface. There's several different types of these listeners. So it's all kind of, I can't remember what the interface is at this time. But basically that's the information about when a client's removed. So now I want to jump into security, right? So you have several methods here. You can add a security policy, but one of the limitations that I really see is you can only have like one security policy. So I kind of wrap this with like an observer pattern and some implementations I've done so that you can provide multiple applications, have multiple levels of security, but that's not too hard to do. So here you look at, can handshake. It's kind of like getting connected. Can you create? So that's actually creating a channel. Can you subscribe? Can you subscribe to a channel? And can you publish? So one of the things, when we look at can publish, one of the things that's really unique is the server is treated as a client just like all the browsers are. So if you're doing some kind of, you're publishing some, I don't know, some kind of server information, server logs or something like that, or if you're sending information to customers that their account was just created or deleted, the customers on the web can kind of also broadcast to that channel as well. So this is kind of a mechanism for taking care of that. So one of the things when I looked at this that really freaked me out was, wow, all the Java I've ever done, if I'm in a reasonable shop, is based on JAS, right? So where's my request, right? How do I get at cookies, right? How do I want to look at the request, get the cookies. I want to, look at the roles. Excuse me? It's Java authorization and authentication, right? Security. So basically, it's just the security model that all J2E containers provide, but it's based on a request, having a request, and that's not here. So talk to Greg and ask him about it. One of the hidden features that you'll never see, like published anywhere, is that you can get the request through a hack of a thread or local, and you have to turn on this hidden feature down here, request available true, in the web XML. I don't know if they've better publicized this, but I know when I asked Greg at Java 1 about it, he said, yeah, just look up request available in the code, and you'll kind of figure it out. But I don't think it's published anywhere how to do it. So I don't know. I figured this. So now it's for you, right? So, but anyway, from the request, of course, then you can ask what are the user's roles, are they an admin, all these kind of interesting information. Well, so the idea of what they're trying to do here is to abstract it where it's not tied to Java, right? So that these interfaces can be implemented in Perl, they can be implemented in Python, they can be implemented anywhere. So all of the kind of core interfaces and all that don't really look like Java, and so that's why they made it so hard. Yeah, so I've had kind of, I don't know, difficulties with that as well. So now we'll look at kind of a simple chat demo. I'm going to skip this demo because we ran late on our panel. I had some Sunspot little remote computers. I show you all kinds of games and things that I have these guys little fight and such. But we can tail a log file, so you can see, you can get kind of an idea. Oh, I don't want to tail a log file. We'll do it another day. Set another date. What's the date? The 29th? We can tail a log file. So here's an application that lets you kind of tail a log file. So I'm tailing the Hudson log file over here. So it's a build tool, and I'll have it kind of auto refresh. So you'll see every time that, there we are. So every time that Hudson refreshes here, you'll see the log come out. So it refreshes like every 10 seconds. And this is, yeah, boom, there it is, right? So it's real time. The second you see the Hudson request happen, here's all the here's all the CSS, all the images and things like that I've downloaded. So you can kind of see some ways of using Comet, right? The second that server-side thing happened, I'm pushing it out. So, all right. So here's a simple chat application, right? Say hello, how are you? And this is basically the Cometd kind of standard example that they show that you can all kind of go through. And I also kind of walk through there kind of how that works. So hopefully that you guys could use that as a starting point. But I found for myself, getting started with Cometd, using Bayou, using the Jetty implementation, I personally found it to be very, very easy. Kind of, I don't know, just flowed very well for me. And then what I did is I went ahead and put a server up here that has this chat example running. So you guys are welcome to try that at your leisure, or try it on your iPhone or whatever it is, to try that out. So that's basically all that I have. Let's talk about misconceptions, and then I think that's all. One of the real misconceptions, and you'll hear competing vendors talk, they will say, pub sub, who wants to do that, right? Pub sub is not like something for solving problems, right? We don't need to pub sub, but it's really a misconception. It's really something that people have used against Bayou. Just because it has, or because Bayou has that feature, doesn't mean that it's like the only way that you can do things. And their early marketing information or early documentation kind of was flawed in that fashion. So they've reworked a lot of that, and they've done a pretty good job. But there's two specific channels that make this kind of RPC style one-way communication, or single-person things happen, and that's the meta channel and also the service channel. So anything that starts with /service is basically delivered to only one customer. So it will not ever broadcast. The same thing with Meta. The Meta channel is another special channel that's all about doing connection, reconnection, and all those handshakes. So the future, WebSockets, right? So when we have WebSockets in 2022, we'll all be ready. But the spec's very mature. I don't know. I'll let you guys make your own opinion on that based on what you saw on the panel. So it is a text-based, which is kind of confusing, right? When I think about sockets, I don't think about text. So anyway, any questions? And I wrote an article on developer.com about kind of Comet stuff, and then also I'm one of these days I'm going to finish an article on the Bayeu protocol, also on developer.com, and then upcoming events here at the Silicon Valley Code Camp coming up November 8th and 9th. It's a great event. We've already got close to 1,000 people registered, so you should come out. There's 110 sessions. It's free. And I'll also be giving a similar talk on Comet at that time as well. And Michael Carter's presenting as well. So a lot of big names, Douglas Crockford. So Bill Venters, Java Champion. So great. Anybody have any questions? Does this look easy? Difficult? I mean, it's very doable. Most things are 1 or 2 lines of code. The framework is amazing. It takes care of everything. One of the things that you might be concerned about is like, how does it handle the 2 requests per domain with the long polling that's done within Bayeu. Basically what it does is the first request is done through advice. The first request itself will do long polling, and then the first tab, when a second tab comes in, it looks at the cookie and says, oh, I've already seen this person. Please don't do long polling. Please do regular polling. So your first tab is going to be very, very efficient, and then it's going to fall back to a lower level for all other tabs. So, yeah. So at this time, any other questions? Anyone? Yes. I don't know. Blaze? Yeah, but if it's Flash-based, it's nothing to compare. I mean, you have duplex socket ability, and I mean that's a client installation, right? This is being able to take the hacks within the browser, sum those up in a framework, and let you do Comet without having your customer click a scary, yes, I allow Flash. So if you are writing an internal application, that's great, but if you work for a large financial institute like I do, it's probably not so good to, you can lose a lot of money if you're forcing people to say yes on a security, issue. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to ask everyone a favor. I want to go ahead and close things up and let Bess do a raffle here at the end. But the favor I want to ask you all is that everybody's out of the room by 10 o'clock, right? Because we owe that to Google for giving us free pizza, free food, and all that, okay?
Two things. So I have a lot of things to give away. First is the book, and second of all, another important thing is food, okay? So I want, all of you to take pizza.
Take some pizza, and John will give anybody a Kazing shirt who wants one. It will keep you from getting hurt on your bicycle.
Take the whole
Cars
pizza.
will see you.
Take the whole box with you.